and jump in. So welcome everybody tonight, and let me go ahead and open this up. So, and thank you for helping me with this. Greetings everyone, and welcome to our 6th Sports and Schmooze event that we've hosted during this pandemic, which will hopefully end soon. So same format, there's going to be a discussion between Ingram and Josh, and then we'll open it up for some questions. Feel free to put questions in the chat box. So on this occasion, we're enormously privileged to be able to welcome one of America's best known all-round play-by-play announcers in the form of the one and only Josh Lewin, whose most recent commentary, in fact, maybe his last commentary incident, was to describe Jalen Suggs' miraculous last-second buzzer-beating basket, which dumped the Cinderella UCLA Bruins out of the NCAA tournament. No doubt we'll talk about that over the course of the next hour. Josh's current UCLA gig, which includes basketball and football, is only the most recent assignments in what is a long list of prestigious, well-known, and not so well-known engagements, which began when he was just 16 years old, as he secured his first commentary gig with the Rochester Red Wings, the AAA affiliate of the now Washington Nationals. Since then, Josh has commentated on baseball with the Orioles, Cubs, Tigers, Rangers for 11 years, Mets, and the Red Sox. He was also one of the main commentators for Fox Major League Baseball, where he called those Saturday games for the network for 15 years. In football, he's been a sideline reporter for the NFL, and for 11 glorious years was the play-by-play guy for the then San Diego Chargers. In hockey, he's commentated for the Dallas Stars, and lastly, and most important, he's a dad and husband who calls home Solana Beach.
Josh, welcome.
That was pretty good. Thank you guys for having me. And sounds like I can't keep a job from that bio.
Well, it sounds like you've certainly been around the sports world. It's a remark, and we could have gone on actually, right? We're talking about awards that you've been given and so on and so forth. So really appreciate your time. Can we start with that Gonzaga UCLA game, since it's clearly the freshest in people's minds? Leah, can you just play that brief clip that we have, right, of Josh calling it, which before you do so, right, was actually recognized as the best of all of the 5 English language calls that were made that evening, and that included the one by Jim Nantz. So this was the best call, the most appropriate call. So Leah, if you can play it, let's just play that. It lasts for about a minute.
Second, let's go ahead and...
Singleton, 20 seconds to go. The Bruins are down 2 out of timeouts. They win it with a 3, they tie it with a 2. Here comes Johnny Juzang. 11 seconds left. Juzang is double teamed. Juzang with 8, with 7. Gets to the elbow, a floater, line drive, no. Gets his own rebound, scores off the glass. 3.3 to go. Here's Suggs at midcourt. 2, 1, a 32-footer. Oh my goodness, he baked it in. Gonzaga has won the game. Wow. Cry in your pillow. Unbelievable. Suggs hit a runner. Bank shot going home. The Bruins are going home.
That's why you slay the dragon in regulation.
They're going to check the monitor to make absolutely sure it left the hand in time. I think it did.
It did.
From just beyond midcourt, Suggs, the All-American, a miracle bank shot, and it counts officially. It's good, and the season is over. Juzang had tied it with 3.3 to go. And Jalen Suggs, who remember was out of the game when he got elbowed in the chest, he could hardly breathe. He's the guy that hit the miracle shot from just around the logo. I mean, that's Steph Curry stuff. And he banked it in. He hit it center square, and it dropped into the net. And the Bulldogs have beaten the Bruins 93-10.
Wow.
That sucked.
Just describe the whole deal, the emotion, the tournament, the Cinderella story, right? I was following your tweets during the tournament, and they were beautifully written, right? Really captured the emotion. But you tell us how it felt in that moment and over the course of the couple of weeks.
Well, it's funny. I was just actually doing some UCLA football prep earlier today, and I had forgotten completely. And I'll say this with Elon trolling me wearing that Stanford shirt. The football season ended kind of the same way, where Bruins were going for a win in overtime against Stanford. They were down 48-47 and went for the 2-point conversion, and they ended up about a foot short. And that's how the football season ended. So I'd forgotten about that entirely. So then basketball kind of goes one better. And, the difference being that, football is just a random 3-4 shortened season. Nobody expected anything. The basketball season, the team started kind of dismally and then caught fire and then lost its fire. They lost 4 games in a row, barely made the tournament at all. They were like the last suitcase on the truck going to the tournament in Indianapolis. And suddenly they had this incredible 5-game win streak in the tournament and they're in the Final Four. So they became America's darlings, which was just completely unexpected. And they were all set to win that game or, at least go into a double overtime with Gonzaga, which was undefeated. And, in 3 seconds, it just all changes and your season is over. So it was a remarkable run. And Mick Cronin obviously now is getting all kinds of applause, deservedly so, for what he's done to resurrect the program. It's just, I've been with UCLA for 5 years now, and it finally feels relevant. And that was kind of the whole reason I took the gig in the first place. Was I love the brand, I love everything about it. I love the colors. I love the campus, and football's been, let's face it, an atrocity. These few years that I've been doing it. I think they're about to turn the corner, but it just hasn't been a lot of fun yet. And basketball, I debuted with that Lonzo Ball, TJ Leaf season, which was awesome, but then they lost in the Sweet 16. And then they kind of disappeared off the map again for a few years. So for it to come bursting back like that and now has legs, right? Because, the pundits are saying UCLA, with or without Juzang, will be one of the top 3-4 teams in the nation next year. There's just so much excitement now. They return almost everybody. So it's just so cool that UCLA is cool and relevant again. And this is why I wanted in, was I want to be able to be part of something great like that and have the pleasure of waving the banner for it.
No, it's beautiful. I mean, you've been in and around so many sports over the course of 25, 30 years. So you must have experienced moments of great emotion, okay? Highs and lows. How did that moment rank, and how did that entire experience rank over the course of your career?
Yeah, that was right up there. I mean, with the Chargers, there were so many disappointing playoff losses, and those kind of still throb. I stopped doing those games in 2017, but seemed like every year they were so close, and then somebody would just kind of soil themselves right at the end of a big playoff game, and it wouldn't go well. So there's part of me, it's funny, Ingram, the very first year I was doing play-by-play for a living, when I was just out of college in 1990, I was doing AAA baseball in my hometown of Rochester, and they won the Governor's Cup. They beat the Yankees AAA team. Sorry again, Elon, but they won that best of 5 in Game 5 in Columbus, beat the mighty Yankees. And so I was 1 for 1, got a cute little championship ring out of it. I'm like, this is easy. That was 1990, and that's still the only championship I've ever come close to. I'm 0 for everything else after that. So, a lot of heartbreak, a lot of emotion. There have been some cool finishes too, obviously. You get to call the miracle shots that go in instead of go against you sometimes, and that's fun. A lot of Chargers stuff, a few Mets games that ended up pretty well. But again, they made the World Series one of my years there and lost these really tough extra inning games to Kansas City, that World Series. So, the thing about that Gonzaga game, though, is it wasn't until I think a good 20, 30 minutes after the game, when kind of the dust settles, did we really understand, Tracy Murray and I, that was truly one of the most epic college basketball games ever. I mean, when you're in the eye of the storm, you don't really even appreciate it, but then you're kind of looking at the stats and you're like, wait a minute, there were how many lead changes, and the game was tied for how long, and nobody ever went on more than a 5-0 run the entire game. And this team shot 60% and this team shot 61%. I mean, that stuff's impossible, you know. So the scope of it didn't really hit until well after, because you're just when you're in it, when you're in the storm, you just don't even notice some stuff. But yeah, I don't know if I'm over it yet. You know, I've kind of half joked that it might be about August of 2024 by the time I'm fully over that shot. But you know, so glad that we got to be there. We didn't travel all year because of the pandemic, and then finally we got cleared into Indianapolis, and it was like this embarrassment of riches. We could have stayed there, you know, for basically what, 19, 20 days in a row. I chose to keep coming back to Solana Beach, because I just honestly kept thinking, well, you know, they're not going to win. You know, I'll go out there, do a game, and come back, and they just kept winning. So I kept making these round trip flights, changing planes in Chicago or Dallas or wherever, and I'm thinking, man, you know, I'm spending more time on airplanes. Thank God I'm double vaccinated, but you know, it was a trip. It was really fun.
And how easy is it to get, because you've obviously been associated with multiple teams in multiple sports, how easy is it to get emotionally vested in a particular team, a particular franchise?
Well, I mean, for me, very much so. I mean, because when you get to know the people involved, they're your family, you know. So my kids are college aged, and you know, to me, it's kind of like, you know, these are my kids' friends, you know, or and the coaches are my age, you know, when we all get to know each other. So you feel what they feel, and during the pandemic, not nearly as much, because we were all segregated and separated, and you know, normally when you're really hanging out and really getting to know people on that personal level, that's when it really takes. But yeah, you know, I mean, you feel the same emotion they do, even though you're not on the court or on the field. That happens every time.
How did you get that gig at 16? For a 16-year-old kid, right? I mean, what a dream. You know, we've all done it. We've all commentated in our showers and places. You actually got a gig to commentate on a sports team when you were 16 years old?
Yeah, I got lucky. I mean, well, it's luck in the intersection of perseverance, I guess, too. But I mean, when I was 5, I just knew this is what I wanted to do for a living, and grew up in a minor league city, not a major league city, so you have a little bit more access to things, I suppose. Rochester is a city of about 1 million people, and it has, you know, AAA baseball and, you know, American Hockey League, not National Hockey League, and so on down the line. So yeah, I was just very, very. I'm trying not to use the word obnoxious, but in retrospect, that's probably what it was. I just kept offering myself as an unpaid intern to this team that was pretty much right down the road from me. Take the number 7 bus. It would take 15, 20 minutes to get from one side of Rochester to the other. And I started out bringing this little red plastic coffee table. I'd haul it on the bus. I had this little briefcase, and you know, it would sit there. I'd set up my little red coffee table in the bleachers and get my notes out of my briefcase. And I'm, you know, 14, 15 years old, just total nerd boy, just practicing my play-by-play into a tape recorder, and kind of yada, yada, yada. But, you know, the general manager of the team had kind of a Barnum and Bailey mindset, like, hey, you know, this is adorable. You know what this kid is doing. Let's actually put him on the air. So, you know, they weren't paying me or anything like that at first, but they had me occasionally just come up and read the scores and things like that. But they saw how serious I was about it, and I kept saying, look, you know, I mean, I would love to actually do this. And, you know, so it became a paid internship, which became a paid position to actually do the games with a guy that was, you know, much older than I was, who fortunately, just as I was graduating college, decided to leave broadcasting, go into real estate, because correctly, that is much more lucrative. And just as I was getting out of college at age 21, the full-time job opened up. So I didn't have to start in Butte, Montana, or, you know, some outpost that I had no connection to. I could start at AAA, which is one step away from the majors, which was really lucky at the age of 21. And then just caught some more breaks along the way, and you know, got to the Orioles when I was 26, and that just happened to be the year that Fox Television got the Major League Baseball rights, and they were looking for young guys that they could kind of sculpt a little bit, and they found famous ones. They found sons of famous broadcasters. They found Joe Buck, they found Tom Brenneman, they found Kenny Albert, and then they kind of ran out of famous sperm. So I was given the opportunity to, you know, my dad was a pediatrician. There's like no connection to sports whatsoever. and they just decided, all right, for the last job, let's give it to this kid and see if we can like mold him a little bit, and that just opened every door. Once I was doing network television, it was easy to get phone calls returned and all that. So that became my entree into doing all those teams that Leah mentioned earlier.
Right. I mean, you mentioned your dad was a pediatrician. I mean, presumably, you went to college, and I'm sure that if we'd asked your parents when you were about 10 or 11, what do you want your kid to be? It might well have been something in the quotes unquote professional sphere, doctor, lawyer, accountant, realtor, whatever. Did they ever? Well, first of all, what did you study at college?
So I studied journalism. Went to Northwestern in Chicago, and the thought was, I actually had my housing deposit in at Syracuse, which is right down the road from Rochester. But that was kind of strike one. I wanted to get out and see the world a little bit, and Chicago sounded a lot more sexy than Syracuse. And the other thing that I just kind of had figured out, I just had a lot of people in the industry coach me up on this. That look, I mean, obviously Syracuse is a great broadcast school. Bob Costas, Marv Albert, I mean, everybody, Mike Tirico, everybody goes to Syracuse. But there's a line out the door looking to do what you're doing, and you go to a place like Northwestern where it's not a sportscaster factory, you can probably get a little bit more in terms of reps, and kind of explore some things. Not to mention the fact you'll become a more well-rounded scholar, more well-rounded person, taking some things besides just broadcasting. And I found that to be very good advice. And the example I always give, which, I mean, this was after I was in college, but it's always a thing that I remember, is during that Earthquake World Series between the Giants and the A's in '89, Al Michaels suddenly had to basically become Ted Koppel. He was on the scene to do the broadcast of the game, but all of a sudden the Bay Area is on fire and everything's chaos. And he had the wherewithal to be able to do that. And it just kind of reinforced to me, I want to be able to be that guy. I don't want to just be like, stock, rote, Biff Barnes voice sportscaster guy. I want to have a little bit more depth than that. And that, I think, was the right decision. And I love Chicago and ended up doing the Cubs games for a year, and that was great. But, it was more than anything, though, to be honest, it was just a chance to get out of little Rochester, New York, and go see the world a little bit.
Have you had any Al Michaels type earthquake moments over the course of your career where you really had to shift from being a play-by-play announcer to something that
I'd forgotten about this until just now, and this is something that I lost sleep over for months when I was in Texas doing the Texas Rangers games, and it ended up that somehow this guy ended up being okay, but it was a foul ball to the upper deck, and this guy reached out too far and plummeted to what we all assumed was his demise. And, they stopped the game and all of that. And all I could see was that there were two young kids near him. And I, assumed those were his young kids. And it just, I mean, I don't have to tell you, I mean, I'm sure most of you are parents. I mean, I don't know how I got through it. You had to report what was going on and kind of walk people through. And this whole time, I'm just, I mean, what have I just witnessed in these poor kids and all that? So, it had a reasonably happy ending. The guy lived, although I think is probably still in a wheelchair to this day. But yeah, in those moments, you have to be able to step outside yourself and be professional and, and be able to do things like that. Well, I'd forgotten about that. That was one of the scariest, most awful things I'd ever seen.
Well, it's not something about which you're prepared for in sports broadcast school. Although I'm sure that you use your wits. And many people on the call will be familiar with. There's been a number of tragedies in European football. One of which was the most infamous of which was Hillsborough, where regular sports commentators had to immediately shift to report on 96 people dying in front of their very eyes, and yet somehow they were able to carry it off, right? So instinct obviously kicks in, but it must be very, very challenging. And
I mean, because the whole thing about sports, obviously, as I tell people all the time, I mean, I work in the candy store, right? I mean, it's just, this is nonsense stuff. This is directly designed as getaway theater, where everybody's got their real problems and their real lives, and this is just supposed to be escape. And all we are is just kind of the Willy Wonka that guides people through the chocolate factory. That's it. We're not supposed to be breaking news or commentating on major things. And I think that's part of why I navigated to this even when I was a little kid. Is I don't know that I had it in me to be, as you said, Ingram, a doctor or a lawyer, and I don't think that the index card that I drew from from the universe or from the Almighty, said on it, we want you to learn how to cure cancer, or we want you to be able to do something extremely important. I think I got, my calling, as it were, what I'm blessed with is this ability to um, you know, capture what's going on in the field of sport or on the field of sport and make people, hopefully for 2 hours, 3 hours of their day, just enjoy themselves and forget about their problems, and that's the calling that I always saw it as, I guess. I mean, it's definitely not as important as curing cancer. I mean, it's not even close, but I can't do that anyway. So it's kind of like, if this is something that I'm able to do, this is my calling. I might as well work really hard at it and do it the best of my abilities. And um, it's kind of, I don't know if it's off-putting or weird or whatever, but I just take it as such a sacred responsibility that, even, I mean, UCLA is a good example. It's like, there are people that really do care deeply about it, and they've put their trust in me and, Matt Stevens and Wayne Cook on football and Tracy Murray on basketball. We're there. You're not. We're supposed to give you what you need and what you want. So it's not just showing up and reporting on what you see and going home. It is the responsibility of getting to know the people, getting to know what's important, the statistics that you need, the storylines that you need, and presenting it in a way that's going to be cogent for you, because that's what I'm supposed to be doing.
Now, you've done both TV and radio. Sometimes you've done TV and radio at the same time.
Yeah.
And what are the differences, right? Aside from, one's obviously visual and one's obviously not. What are the differences that you have to be aware of, especially when you're doing both at more or less the same time?
Yeah, it's a great question, and they're two such different mediums, and baseball is a great example of it, because the great thing about baseball and why Vin Scully was the best there ever was is it's all about painting that picture, and Vin was just the master craftsman when it came to that. And I love that challenge. I love the thought that no one can see what's going on, no one knows it, it's all up to you. I kind of enjoy that. With TV, you're basically a talking bookmark, is all it is. I mean, everybody can already see what's going on, and you're there to just kind of augment it a little bit. It's not as challenging, it's not as gratifying, and frankly, it's tougher, because you've got a producer in your ear, you've got a director in your ear, you've got a stage manager there telling you to say this, do that, read this commercial. It's this big hodgepodge, and it's really a guy like Jim Nantz, who you referenced earlier, Joe Buck's another great example. They have this incredible ability to just, even if you got 5 different people talking at you at the same time, they're able to just seamlessly keep talking to the viewer like there's no fire here, there's nothing weird going on. And it's a real trick, and I wasn't great at it. I did it, I faked it okay, but it really would spark my anxiety. If you got 5 different people telling you 5 different things, they all want something from you at the same time, how do you serve 5 masters all at once, and the viewer, which is the most important thing? So radio is much more peaceful in that regard. It really is a blank easel, and you get to paint on it with whatever brushstrokes that you choose. So for me personally, I mean, when I was given the opportunity, do you want to do radio or do you want to do TV? TV is probably 5 times as lucrative, but it was kind of like, all right, I've made enough money to send my kids to college. I don't need to be Scrooge McDuck here. As long as I can live comfortably and my kids are okay, it's not a contest to see who makes the most money. What makes me the happiest, and I think that the radio by far is that medium for me.
Was there for any of your gigs, we talked about the memories earlier on, right? But are you particularly fond, for whatever reason, of any period of your life, your professional life, that resonates, that you really have a particular soft spot for, aside obviously from UCLA, which are your current employer?
Yeah, no, I mean anything UCLA, obviously. But I will say that when I first got the Chargers job, and this would have been in 2005, so I was probably 10 years in as a Fox national broadcaster. I was doing the Saturday game of the week and all that. Was also doing a Thursday night package for Fox Sports Net. So I was doing national baseball, like a game of the week thing on Thursdays and Saturdays. Would have a, normally we do a Friday Texas Rangers game, as my local package. And then once the Charger season was going to start, obviously that would be a Sunday. So, sometimes it would be, Thursday in one city, then totally different Friday, totally different Saturday, totally different Sunday, totally different Monday. Checkerboarding between baseball, football, baseball, football, baseball. And I'll always remember my very first Chargers assignment. Their very first preseason game that I did was in Green Bay. And I had a stretch where it was I'm sure I get this right. It was a Thursday night game at, I want to say at Yankee Stadium. This was an old Yankee Stadium. Then I had to get to Lambeau for Friday. I had a Saturday game of the week at Fenway, and then my Sunday game was at Wrigley. So it's like the four most iconic venues in sports, other than the Rose Bowl maybe, just Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I remember around that Saturday or Sunday, just kind of that hit me, and I'm like, oh my God, like that's really cool, to be ticking off all these iconic places, just one right after the other. So that might have been a high tide right there. Was maybe August of 2005.
Wow. Did you ever get bored with the travel? Right. I mean, because it seems just crazy. And I know that there was one infamous or famous occasion where you did baseball one afternoon, then you drove down to San Diego to do a game, that evening or that afternoon or something. So you've actually done different sports in different cities on the same day.
Yeah, I mean, I put that on myself. I would always tell people, I'm the one that took multiple gigs, so I'm responsible for getting my butt to and from. And the ultimate was the 2015 World Series that the Mets were in. They played game 4 on a Saturday night at Citi Field. I took the Amtrak, the old milk truck run of Amtrak at like 3 a.m. There's actually a 3 a.m. train from New York to Baltimore, where the Chargers were playing the Ravens that afternoon. That game went overtime. I knew it. I knew it would too. And I had arranged it at my expense because, again, you do what you got to do. I chartered a very tiny plane to get me from Baltimore back to LaGuardia because Game 5 of the World Series was that night. So within 24 hours, yes, it was World Series Game 4 in New York, Chargers at Ravens, and then right back for Game 5 of the World Series. And had the Mets not kicked the ball around, would have gotten on the charter with them to go to Kansas City for Game 6, but they lost Game 5, and I got to go home and sleep it off. But yeah, you asked if the challenges, I guess, with the travel, or what did I get bored by? I never got bored by it, but I got agitated by it. I think the older I got, I was 20, 30, 40. You're living a dream. It's like, oh my God, I'm running for another flight. This is so much fun. The old O.J. Simpson commercials before he was that O.J. And they for Hertz, he's running through the airport, and it was cool. It's like you feel like you're living on the edge and all of that. And then kind of somewhere around my mid 40s, I'm 52 now, but I think around 45, I was kind of like, this is getting stupid. I mean, air travel's not getting any easier, as I'm sure a lot of and flights were more and more crowded and less easy to get. And I don't want to get on a soapbox, but the breakdown of civility just in general, I mean, people stink sometimes, I mean, people coming back, reclining in your face and making noise, and it stopped being fun, several years ago. So I don't mind travel. I've got noise canceling headphones, I got a laptop, I get my work done, it's fine. But I have no desire anymore. And you asked earlier, am I doing baseball this year? To do 162 games and travel all the time, have no spring, have no summer. This past year, even though it was the pandemic, it was the first time that I've actually been off on the 4th of July since I was 15 years old.
Oh.
I mean, let alone not that I think Father's Day for me is any great big deal, but I mean, to just be able to be taken out for lunch on Father's Day, and I've never done it, until this past year. So, I like travel. In fact, I love travel. I mean, you saw me go all the way to England just to see one Brighton game and come the heck home.
Right.
In theory, I like travel, but it's a volume business, right? Too much of it is not for me.
No, I can personally attest to the fact that Josh you did a Mets game on the Friday night. You took the night flight to the UK. You arrived in Brighton, saw the game, and then you were doing another Mets game on the Sunday, right? So it was pretty incredible. What about the pandemic? How has life been for you in the pandemic? Because presumably it's nothing that anybody has ever experienced, but for someone that's used to being on the go almost literally all the time, it must have been a major shock to your system.
Yeah, I got bored quickly because, I'm used to having all these events to do and all these things going on. But, two things happened. I think probably for all of us, this first one, we got back in touch with our loved ones and with ourselves and just kind of slowed everything down. I think it was a blessing in a weird way. I mean, I'm very blessed that no one, I unfortunately know several people that unfortunately didn't make it, with COVID. I think we've all been touched by that. But in terms of immediate family, we ended up unscathed, and I'm just so thankful for that. So with that out of the way, it was kind of like, okay, let's just really enjoy this downtime with each other. And, I'm very thankful, my wife and I get along so well that, you hear these stories about people just kill each other because they're not used to being in that close proximity all the time. But we made it, we made it fine. And we tried to travel safely and often enough to see our kids. She's got 2 from a prior marriage. I've got 2 from a prior marriage. So, we carefully worked our way around that. And so that was kind of number one. But, number 2, it gave me the opportunity to pivot and grow and do some other things. I've gotten into podcasting and content creation and got back into music a little bit, all these things that I'd kind of left aside or hadn't really even experienced in terms of the digital platform, the podcasting, all of that. So yeah, found some new skill sets to work on, and didn't, I kept saying, I'm going to learn Italian, and I'm going to do all this other great stuff, and never quite took it to those heights, but did enough new things that I think that's the odd blessing of what I call the great pause. The once you navigate the actual health aspect of the pandemic, and unfortunately for a lot of people other than me, it hit a lot more closer to home. So I don't want to minimize it at all. But, once you could kind of get your head up out of the ground and look around, I think it really opened up some opportunities just to get back in touch with various parts of yourself that you might have lost.
Yeah, and we do have, and I hope you don't mind us sharing this, we do have, Leah, an example, all right, of one of your little podcasts that you were doing at the very beginning of the pandemic. So why don't we play this for about 30 seconds, I think it is, right? And then you can comment.
On the clock, the old El Paso Taquito almost ready. A giddy sense of anticipation here in Josh's kitchen. This crowd, the wife, the dog, everyone waiting for the Maytag microwave to produce these 180 calories of abject perfection. 7 seconds left. It's happening. Delirium in Solana Beach. Do you believe in afternoon snacking? Yes! Oh my, does that look good? A perfectly microwaved taquito.
And was it good?
It was pretty good, yeah. Although all the feedback I got was who microwaves one taquito, and that is a fair point. That was the last one.
But there was a serious aspect to some of your podcasting. I know, with the Jumping Bean podcast, which we're not going to show all of them. Don't worry about it.
Please.
But again, I thought that showcased your remarkable broadcasting talent. Who on earth can do a play-by-play on something coming out of a microwave? But there was a serious point, and you have been involved in a number of different causes, particularly mental health that I know has been inspired by your association with some of the Chargers players and some others. So, you know, would you care to talk about that a little bit? Because that obviously is something that's
Yeah, no, the jumping bean Olympics that I put together was a fundraiser, and yeah, I am pretty serious about the mental health space. I mean, I've got in my family there's a history of anxiety and depression, and you know those are things I've battled on and off myself over the years, and I think it's kind of an underreported, although these days, thankfully, not as nearly as much underreported malady that affects just a lot of people. And to destigmatize it, I think, is really important, and just to kind of shine a light on the issue. So I created a website, which is really just kind of a placeholder, you know, kind of a meeting place for people to come and just kind of look at other people's experiences and hopefully get the sense that they're not alone if they're dealing with anything. But yeah, you know, I did see the pandemic as an opportunity to not only grow that thought, but address. I mean, you know, obviously, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, when things were just so chaotic and difficult, and we didn't know what was happening next. I think that combination of being able to just take a breath and you know find something to laugh about was really important. And in the moments that you can't laugh or you didn't feel that emotion, you know, to give you a place to go, or you know, at least recommend some places to go to get some help. And so yeah, I became passionate about that. I'm still passionate about it. It's just kind of like I feel like with things getting not all the way back to normal, obviously, but reasonably back towards normal. You know, there's light at the end of the tunnel, and trying to kind of push past a little bit.
beautiful. Right, we're going to open it out to give others the opportunity to ask some questions. So if you want to ask a question, just put it in the chat box or raise your digital hand. We've got a question here from Jerry Abelus. Jerry, you want to, Malia, can you unmute Jerry if he's muted? Jerry, go ahead.
Hey, Jerry.
Hey, thanks, Ingram. Thanks, Josh. I love UCLA basketball. I like watching it. And there's been a lot of divisiveness, I think, caused by Bill Walton. I just want to know what your thoughts are of him as a commentator, a color commentator. I personally love him, but I know that he rubs some people the wrong way. So I'd just like to know, since you probably sit in the same room with him at a fair amount of time.
Yeah, I actually, you know, it's weird. I hadn't thought about this till right now, but Bill and I sat next to each other, of all things. And I'm like 5 foot nothing, he's 7 foot whatever. But we were seatmates on the flight back from Vegas to San Diego when they canceled the Pac-12 tournament in March of last year, because we got the word at the same time, hey, you know, you guys can just go home because there is no tournament. And that's probably the longest I've sat with Bill all at once. You know, I had him for an hour and a half, you know, next to me on a plane. I love Bill because, well, for many reasons, but he is who he is. You know, there's no affectation. You know, you get the unvarnished Bill Walton all the time, and it's not your garden variety color commentary. I understand that. I'm sure Bill understands that too. But I think anybody who can be that true to themselves, I mean, as long as they don't have, you know, horrible opinions about, you know, world politics and things like that, I think he's tremendous. I mean, he loves UCLA. He loves basketball. He loves what he does. It is not for the faint of heart. He's, you know, he's not your father's Oldsmobile, so to speak, on, you know, the way he presents a ball game. But anybody who can be that true to who they are, I say bravo.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, Jerry Krautman, I think you've got your digital hand raised and you're mute. There you go.
I'm going to be a hog and ask two questions. One, have you ever done a recreation of a baseball game or basketball game or football game on radio? And how does that work? Because when I was a kid, I was from Denver. We used to listen to the Denver Bears recreations.
Sure.
Second thing is, do you have to be a fan of the team you're working with to be effective, or can you be, for yourself, are you as good when you love the team you're watching as opposed to just this game?
So two great questions, and I would direct you to Jerry. I actually, because I had never done a recreation, that was my podcast project during the pandemic when it first got going, actually. It's called the Throwback League, and all the podcasts are still up. There's a website, thethrowbackleague.com, where I recreated 48 fake baseball games. I took all the World Series teams from basically my childhood, put them into a tumbler, and played the games on a computer, and it spit out the play-by-play, and I would take those sheets of what it said happened, and I'd go into this studio that you're seeing right here, which is my bedroom, and recreate the games. So I had never done it, had always wanted to do it. It was very challenging. Pick any one of the 48 and tell me how I did, but it was a really fun project. And in terms of passion for the team, I think all those years of doing network kind of, those games you have to be dispassionate. If I'm doing a Red Sox Yankees game for Fox, if somebody thinks you're a Red Sox fan, that's a problem, or vice versa. And I would I'd get assigned a Texas Rangers game while I was doing the Texas Rangers games, and because it's a network presentation, you had to all of a sudden divorce yourself from wanting the Rangers to win because, let's say they're playing the Minnesota Twins. You can't just be rooting for the Rangers. So I've done it both ways. I just prefer having skin in the game. And I think that's part of why, because I did a little bit of Pac-12 network before I took the UCLA job. So I had done a couple of UCLA games, but I did them very dispassionately. And then once I got signed to be the UCLA voice, all of a sudden that's my team. These are my guys. That's what I prefer. I like to wear the logo right on my chest. That's just kind of personal preference.
How long did it take to recreate all those baseball games?
The podcast, I would whittle it down. It's only about 45 minutes each. So I would just kind of like do the first inning or two and then do kind of highlights, kind of zip through and then a recap and all that. But to prepare them, it took about 15 hours a piece. So it was basically, I was doing about 2 or 3 days per game. It took me a good 3 months to get through the project because, if what I drew was the 85 Cardinals against the 77 Yankees, off the top of my head, I just didn't remember a lot about Roy White or Bobby Mercer. I just didn't, so I had to go and research that just like I'd be researching a regular game. But I'd be interested. Anybody that wants to go find them, tell me how I did. I'm always interested in feedback.
And that's obviously not something that you would have ever had time to do without the pandemic.
No.
I have a question, and again, please, anybody, raise your digital hand or put it in the chat box.
I think Mark's got one, Ingram, just so we don't.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark. I can't see you, so please go ahead.
All right, thanks. Hey, Josh, really enjoyed what you had to say. I went to school with Tracy, and so I really enjoy the relationship you guys had. We were at UCLA. I graduated in '94. I think you graduated the year or two before me. So I want to hear first about your relationship with Tracy Murray, because it seems like you guys actually get along super well, and I think the camaraderie between the two of you is excellent. And then secondly, I want to know the background on where you came up with the jackhammer dribble.
No, I hadn't even thought about that. To me, it's just like if a guy is pounding the ball into the ground like really hard, it reminds me of a jackhammer. I have no idea where that even came from or when. But yeah, Tracy and I are buds. We actually were just texting yesterday, and we probably text or talk 2 or 3 times a week. I mean, our families have gotten friendly. He's a great dude. Wears the UCLA colors on his sleeve. I think sometimes to a fault. I mean, you've listened, I'm sure, somebody will take an ill-advised shot. I just remember last year, every time Jules Bernard would drive 1-on-3, you'd just hear him like, oh,
or Cody Riley with another foul while falling to the ground.
Cody was kind of the whipping guy this year for sure. But it comes from such a great place that he just wants everybody to succeed and do well. Wonderful guy, like a brother from another mother kind of guy. And and the football guys too, Matt Stevens and Wayne Cook, all these guys are UCLA royalty, and they didn't know me from Adam, so to their credit, they really took me under their wing and introduced me around and made sure that I have what I needed. And I'm really fortunate because I have some great partners on both football and basketball.
Great. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you, Mark, for that. Stuart, I think you've got a question.
Yes, yes. Hi, everybody. Hi, Josh. I actually have two questions. When you're doing a football game, what kind of preparation do you undertake the day before? Are you trying to cram statistics and memorize a bunch of stuff, or are you putting out notes, specific references that you're going to look at during the course of the game? And then the second question, just kind of for fun, of all the different ballparks and arenas and stadiums you've been to, is there one that you really like the most, where you always look forward to it and smile when you see it's on your schedule? What's your favorite place?
That's a great question. Pauley has very quickly become that place for me for basketball, just because, I mean, for many reasons, obviously, but the history, the banners, and when the crowd is in there, it's just, yeah. Rose Bowl obviously is growing on me. I haven't seen it filled yet, to be honest with you.
Oh, right.
And I hope that's coming, but it obviously it's a beautiful venue, and when you watch the sunset there, it's just breathtaking. But it's so cavernous, and we sit so high and so far back. There's no intimacy there for us. So with basketball, you're right there on the court, and there's all this, just this throb of activity, and so Pauley very quickly has become that. Baseball wise, I think Wrigley and Fenway are those places for me. And and strangely, even though it was a total dump, Qualcomm Stadium in San Diego, because that's where that's where you go to work. That's home. For those Chargers games. And as for prep, it really starts on the Monday for a Saturday, where it's probably about, I would say, 16 to 18 hours total of prep that you'll do for a game. That's if UCLA obviously is one of the teams already, there's not, all you're really doing is daily upkeep at that point, because not a lot change. You don't have to learn new players or anything like that. But for the other team, to do them justice, yeah, it's not just memorization, but you want to watch them on tape a little bit. You want to go through all of the notes and the narratives, and I'll talk to people with the program. I'll read 2-3 months worth of back issues of newspapers from whatever town. And it's funny when you draw like a Washington State game, there's only one newspaper in Pullman, and there is one in Spokane too, but there's only so much stuff that's out there. So it's almost like a little bit, you give yourself a break. It's like, okay, I'm trying to get everything I can on this opponent, but there's only so much I can really do. When you're taking on USC, when you're taking on even one of the Arizona schools or something like that, let alone when you're playing Oklahoma or something like that, there is just no shortage of great information about every player and the history of the program. And I don't want to be caught flat-footed. You never know who the star player is going to be. It could be a backup linebacker, and you better be ready to tell his story and let people know where he's from and what he's all about. So football takes a lot longer to prep than basketball, because there's easily 40 or 50 players on each team that you got to know. Basketball is like 7 or 8. So, for a basketball game, it's maybe 8-9 hours prep tops. For a football game, it's easily double that. But it's a labor of love. I love the R&D. The research and development is part of the fun.
Thanks.
Thank you, Stuart. Ilan, right? You're on mute, but be gentle on your Pac-12 buddy here.
So as you can tell, I'm actually a season ticket holder for Stanford football, and even though I live here in LA, but this is a Pac-12 question, which is, other than the overachievement of the Pac-12 in this year's NCAA basketball tournament, call it over the last 5 or 6 years, both in football and in basketball, the Pac-12 has, from my opinion, definitely lagged the other Power 5 conferences. In your opinion, why is that, and is this a trend that can be reversed?
It's intelligent questions from a guy on a Stanford shirt and a Yankees hat. Actually, great points, and hopefully what you mentioned first actually will spur the turnaround. The fact that the Pac-12, just from out of nowhere, was suddenly seen as kind of a cool league again, even for just 2 or 3 weeks. Not a fan of the outgoing commissioner, to be completely honest with you. I think he did some things that were probably very well meaning, but just didn't put the conference in a great competitive space. The conference needs to be seen by the nation, and the Pac-12 network just never got the traction to get into homes. There are recruits that are, I mean, I think the stat was of the top 10 recruits uh, in Pac-12 regions for football last year, only two of them actually stayed to go to Pac-12 colleges. Everybody was going to Alabama, everybody's going to Clemson, everybody's going to Oklahoma. So the ability to build a fence around California and keep kids interested in staying in California, I think is important. And one thing that's a little subtle, but I don't have to tell you guys these days, a lot of it is the kids are looking for, what are you going to do for my brand? How can I build my brand? I want to be an Instagram star. I want to, if I'm going to go to the NBA someday or the NFL someday, I want to be able to really put myself out there. This is LA. I would think that both USC and UCLA should be able to be at the complete forefront of that movement. Like, hey, if you're interested in being some sort of social media sensation, or if you want to grow yourself in the content space, or whatever we're calling it, we've got all kinds of ways that you can get seen and known and get better about sculpting your brand. Which 5 years ago, this is not a conversation we're having, but if that's a kind of a weird loopholey kind of way to convince kids that, what, staying on the West Coast is not a bad idea. I'm open to anything, to just make the conference more competitive. So maybe some new blood, whether it's a new commissioner, a whole new staff, whatever, just kind of some new ways of packaging things and approaching things that can only help. Because right now, you're exactly right. The Pac-12 is seen as the weakest link in the major conferences, and it's not even close.
Oh, going back to Bill Walton earlier, I will say that he may be the most vociferous booster of the Conference of Champions. When you watch a Walton commentated game, he must say Conference of Champions, I don't know, 24 times.
Yeah,
So
no, it's great, and again, it's genuine. I mean, nobody's paying him to do that. He just really has a love for the conference, for UCLA, for here in San Diego. I mean, he loves what he loves. Grateful Dead. He's not going to trick it out or varnish it in any way. And I think Bill's actually a great ambassador, if you want to put it that way.
Awesome. I think we've got time for a couple more. Gary, I think you have a question.
I'm muted. I had a quick question. First of all, I'm very impressed with everything you've said. Question for you: how do you physically take your notes? I mean, do you write it down on paper? Do you have it on your computer? Because you have to react so quickly. It's not something you can go through, 15 pieces of paper. I'm just curious how you manage to do all these many facts you obtain in your 7 or 8, 10 hours of reviewing it for each game.
So I'll take a cheat sheet with me to the game. For football, I actually have, I'm sitting, if I can pull this out here.
Okay.
I don't have, I've thrown out everything from this last year, but it's literally like a big, I can get these at Staples, but I'll fold them over, and on one side it's UCLA offense, and on the bottom side it's Stanford defense, and then I'll flip it around here, Stanford offense and UCLA defense, and I'll have in very tiny type, like 6-point font, just everything that I think might be on the quiz that afternoon. And you're right, I don't have time to, as the play is going, look down at it or anything, but kind of the day before, I'm trying to memorize as much as I can of what's on the cheat sheet. For basketball, by the way, all it is a manila folder, because you don't need this much stuff. But I'll have everything printed out, kind of copied and pasted on there, so that during a commercial, or while Matt and Wayne are talking, or Tracy's talking, if I kind of lose my place, or I think I recall something, but I don't quite have it, I can look down and find it and know that I'm getting it right. Because there's nothing worse than thinking you know something, and then it's like, oh, I actually was off by that. But you never want to be inaccurate. So I would say 60-70% of what I want to get out there. I've managed to memorize the other 30% or so. I know where I can find it if I need to go hunt for it. And, then things will happen where you never expected it. There's some total surprise. And that's where having a good internet comes in handy, because, I can pretty quickly figure out what to type into a Google search. Last time UCLA scored more than 50 points in one half. Might take me a while to go find it, but within 60, 90 seconds, I can figure out where to go get that information. But the stuff that you're going to need to know, try to commit it to memory, but always have it on a cheat sheet in front of you just in case.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks for the question, Gary. So final question, I think we have, Jerry, you have another question. We'll make this the last question. Go ahead.
Thank you. Chip Kelly, overrated?
No, I think just not quite there with UCLA yet. Although it's a fair question. The one-loss record would lead you to believe otherwise, I'm sure. But Chip has a vision, and he's a football genius. I mean, he really does know the sport. I think what you hear a lot is people wish he would put himself out there more. It's just not who he is. He's a very private guy, and that is very counter to what a lot of football coaches are. There's a lot of rah, razzle dazzle and politicking, and he just kind of wants to be left alone and be in his lab and, with the beakers and, try to figure out the exact best way to win a football game. I mean, nobody wants to win a game more than Chip does, but, because it hasn't quite happened yet, understandably people are like, well, let's go. Let's see some of these science experiments actually coming to do something. So I think he's a great coach. I think he's a great dude. He needs to win some games. I mean, that's just all the simplest way I can put it.
Brilliant. We've come to the end of our hour. So Josh, thank you so much for imparting.
Thank you guys, Ingram. Thank you for having me, and Leah. Thank you both for the invite. And I don't mean to run off. We're not really running off to do that much. I've got. I promised Stacey we'd watch. What is it called? Turner Classic Movies tonight. I think Pillow Talk is on, so I got to go. But happy wife, happy life. Somebody once said, so I'm gonna go do that.
But Josh, thank you again so much. Leah, do you want to just wrap it up and close it for us?
Yes, thank you so much, Josh. And as always, thank you, Ingram. You are one of the best sports moderators TBA could possibly have, and you have the perfect voice for it. I don't know if anybody else have thought that, but I certainly do. But yeah, so we're in the works of figuring out our next gathering, but I'm hoping to find a Jewish athlete with an interesting story. We'll get back to you soon about that. But thank you again, everybody. Hope you enjoyed, and we'll connect with you again soon.
Good.
Thanks, Leah. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate you. And
take care, Josh.
All right.
Thanks, Josh.
Bye-bye. Bye.